Hey bookies, I wanted to read just a short excerpt of my new book that is coming out this week, next week probably. It's called The Last Session, and I wanted to read a bit anyway just to see how it sounds, see if it sounds okay. So I thought I might as well inflict it on you guys. So it's called The Last Session, chapter 1, straight in at the beginning. So the call said Freya was missing, and that's how he came to be driving when he should have been in bed with Jill, Jane, Julie, whatever. She had great legs. It was the dumbest thing he'd ever heard. Freya had never lost anything in her life, least of all herself. And as for suspected foul play, when it came to his sister, he wouldn't fancy any foul player's chances. She was the sensible one. She kept herself in a straight-laced line. When the phone rang just after 7 that morning, the light outside was still undecided about becoming day. Theo had not been awake long enough after a night of black sambuca and sex to feel anchored to anything. He tried to make sense of the phone call, which felt like part of a dream that had followed him into consciousness. The ringtone was too sharp for the hour. When he picked it up, there was a pause on the line. The caller needed to confirm Theo's identity before continuing. Not his mother, then. He couldn't decide whether that was a good thing. He was certainly glad that in his fugue state, his mother's disapproving face didn't spring into his mind. Mr. Hart. It was a male voice. He sounded professional and trained in neutrality. Theo didn't trust any job description that included the word officer. Yes, he sat up, disengaging himself from a leg that went on to infinity. He heard papers shifting. This is Detective Bill Carver from Lancashire Constabulary. I'm calling regarding your sister, Freya Hart. The name didn't attach itself to any logical meaning. It arrived slowly after passing through his hangover. His brain refused to cooperate. It was like an underpaid admin assistant with a simple task. Freya. He tested whether his brain still connected reference points. What about her? He asked after a delay, while fear took the long way round. There was a hesitation. She's been reported missing. The words floated around without committing to interpretation. It felt as though the sentence structure had wobbled into a matrix glitch, and nobody else had noticed. What do you mean? I understand this is difficult. We've spoken to her friends and neighbours. There's been no confirmed contact for several days, and she hasn't turned up for work since last Friday. Theo frowned. That can't be right. She never misses work. She would have been at the clinic yesterday. He was bargaining with Karma, but it wouldn't negotiate. She hasn't turned up all week. What about my parents? Have you spoken to them? Theo was on his way across the bedroom to his ensuite and didn't hear the reply. What's going on? A tousled, bleached blonde head appeared from the bedclothes. Theo was sure she didn't have those angry pimples the night before. How old was this girl? Family emergency. Let yourself out, will you, love? What? I don't have any clean clothes. Aren't you going to run me home? Sorry, pet. This is important. He watched her face drop. The last thing he needed was a one-night error of judgment having histrionics in his bedroom while he had a cop on the phone. Avoiding using her name because he'd forgotten it, he said, "Hey, it was good though, sweetheart. I'll ring you." He motioned to the phone. "Got to take this. Mr. Hart, are you there? My sister isn't the type to go missing. She's reliable, you know. Check again," he said to the policeman. "We've verified the records." Outside, London was already moving. He heard traffic, the mechanical rhythm that had no intention of adjusting to Theo's disruption. The blonde was flouncing around and picking up something short and shiny from the bedroom floor. He felt a pang of guilt and shot her what he hoped was an adorable 32-year-old smile before shutting himself in the bathroom. With a bit of luck, she'd be gone when he came out. Freya wouldn't just disappear, he said into the phone as he urinated. It involved way too much hand-eye coordination. The officer's voice altered and Theo couldn't read the intonation. We're treating it as a missing persons case at this stage. There were stages? How many stages? When was she last seen? He asked. As I said, she left work at 5 p.m. last Friday. Theo felt his wits returning. No, you said she hadn't been at work since Friday, but when was she last seen? We're on Tuesday. We're still establishing that. Theo's phone vibrated, flashing green in his hand, and he looked at it. His mother was trying to ring. He ignored it and continued speaking to Carver. Mum would be worried sick and his dad wasn't well. Theo felt his stress levels rising until the phone stopped dancing. She lives alone, he said. You must have CCTV, her banking activity, something to go on. We're conducting those checks. However, I must warn you that there's a strong suspicion of foul play. Theo waited to respond, but another sound cut across the line. He heard breathing. Somebody was listening to their conversation. The rasp sounded wet and ragged, close enough that he thought somebody was standing behind him in the bathroom. He turned to the empty shower stall and the damp towels on the floor. There was nobody behind him. His alcohol-hanging reflection stared back from the mirror and would have called him a dick if it could move independently of the real him. He heard a noise, like something being dragged across the floor. Carver stopped speaking, and Theo realised that the policeman had heard it too. What's going on here, Hart? Is your sister with you? No, of course not. The sound lasted a few seconds before the line cleared. He felt a draft across his shoulders. The bathroom window was only open an inch. Cold air moved the shower curtain, though there wasn't a breeze, just a sudden iciness in the room. The air was frigid, and on the mirror somebody had written through the condensation with a fingertip, "Run." He moved closer to the glass, blinking to clear his vision, and it was gone. Theo's body prickled, and everything felt too close to his skin. The officer didn't let his implication about foul play linger. Excuse me. If you could come in later today to provide a statement, that would be helpful. It was as though the last 30 seconds hadn't happened. Theo laughed. A statement about what? I'm in bloody London, man. This was a ridiculous fuss about nothing. His sister was a grown woman capable of running her own life, but the call had already moved on, professionally contained. We'll send you the details, sir. The line went dead. Freya, he said quietly. Theo stayed still, listening to the empty line as though the detective might come back and correct his mistake. Freya couldn't be missing. What was she, an escaped dog? The word refused to make any sense. 3 years earlier, she'd turned up at his flat at midnight because he hadn't answered 2 texts and a call after he'd been on a 4-day bender in Prague. She'd let herself in and marched through the flat in her sensible camel coat. Any residual hangover would have scarpered if it could have sneaked past her. Stepping over bodies and take away cartons, her tut would have woken King Tut of the namesake. Theo remembered her standing at the end of his bed with her hands on her hips. Her voice was too pitchy, and man, it was loud. She had no respect for his delicate condition. One day, Theo Hart, you'll actually be dead. and nobody'll notice for days because this is you in your natural state. She'd opened the curtains and forced electrolytes into him while he begged for mercy. Death would have been preferable to Freya's disapproval. That was her all over. She was always hyper-competent, mostly judgmental and impossible to lose. She always let him know that he'd be a useless son without her. She was the one who reminded him of their parents' birthdays, MOT renewals, dental appointments, and whether their dad had been for his bowel cancer checkups. When they were children, he'd got lost in a shopping centre for 10 minutes and she'd found him before security did. Their dad flapped, but Freya was straight on the case and knew where the toy shop was. Theo realised that every memory he had of Freya involved her organising somebody else's chaos. If nobody knew where she was, that was a clerical error in itself. "Freya," he said again. The door opened. "No, it's Stacey and I think I'm going to be sick." He moved aside and pulled her face as she leaned over the bowl. "You need to go home, honey," he said, over the retching. He felt sorry for her, but still managed to ring his mum with one hand and grab Stacey's bag while ushering her out of the door with the other. He'd worry about how alarmingly young she looked without makeup later. Were men expected to check IDs these days? Really? He felt sick himself. Adulthood was all about improv, performed with confidence while everything around you caught fire. "Mum, are you okay? I've just heard about Freya." "Calm down, Theo. I can tell you're stressed. You always worry about Freya when you're like this. She isn't the problem, you know." "What? She's missing, Mum. Freya's missing. Look, I haven't got time to hang about. I'm heading out the door for Barrow. I'll call at yours later." He heard her say, "Okay, dear, but there's really no need," as she hung up. Chapter 2. That's chapter 1 of the last session. Not quite sure what it is. It's a bit of a thriller. It's a bit of a glitch, altered reality, weirdness, bit horror, bit this, bit that, bit way, bit woe. It's coming out next week. I'm quite excited. I'm quite looking forward to it. It's my first book this year. I've normally got 2 or 3 full-length novels out by now. Excuse me. This year, lisp. I've just read a chapter with a lisp. I've never had a lisp before. I've never had a lisp like this before. I'm trying to get used to it and I can't get rid of it. So yes, new book. The last session coming out next week. I'd love it if you'd give it a go. I will be publicising it. Come and talk to me. Nice chat.